Hey everybody. So, a little while back, someone asked me to watch the film Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter. Not long after, I was also asked to watch Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Considering I haven't done a movie review since January and I'm stuck at home for 2 days out of the week anyway, I decided that watching these two films was a good use of my time. After viewing them, and being pleasantly surprised, I decided to make a special double feature review in which I take a look at the greatest slayers of the undead our generation has produced. Now, just a note before I begin. My copy of Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter is rocking the 4:3 camcorder aspect ratio, while my copy of Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter was shot in super widescreen, so unless I zoom them in a lot, one's going to have black bars on the sides and one's going to have black bars on top and bottom. I'll try to make it as tolerable as possible. Let's begin. Now, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter was a pleasant surprise to watch. It was one of those movies I heard about a few years back, thought, ha, that's funny, and then never really watched. I guess I always assumed it was just another dumb action horror blockbuster with a stupid premise, but after watching it, I realized I was actually somewhat wrong. Directed by Timur Bekmambetov and released in 2012, the film centers around the former president's clash with legions of vampires in early to mid-19th century America. Now, of course, the first thing to recognize is that this is a silly premise. There's no other way to put it. I like to imagine a film called Richard Nixon Vampire Hunter to kind of put it in perspective. And probably the film's greatest flaw is how seriously it takes the concept. Now, I've said before that films taking themselves too seriously is something I usually hate, but Lincoln doesn't go as far as to make me hate it. It just seems to lack a bit of self-awareness over how ridiculous the concept itself is. The pacing is somewhat off, mostly through the first half hour, but it gets more comfortable as the film wears on. The story is nothing special, but it's competent and it gets the message across. The character of Lincoln himself is pretty well written. Something that nagged at me throughout the film was just how unnecessary the whole Lincoln aspect is. In the second half, after he becomes president, the story gets a little bit more Lincoln-centric, but for the most part the film could have been just any vampire hunter who lived in 19th century America without too much alteration to the plot. That way the film wouldn't have such an outlandish concept and would be able to justify taking itself seriously, but I digress. In most aspects, the film is competent, but where it excels more than anything else is its action. As an action film, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter is incredible. The fight choreography is tight and exciting, especially considering Lincoln fights with an axe, and the non-combat action scenes are thrilling. There's a lot of really cool action moments, like when Lincoln reveals his axe as a gun and shoots a vampire, or when he uses a silver watch chain to punch a vampire to death. Right here! It might not be a super complex movie, but it's not bad, and the action certainly makes it worth your while. Maybe I'm crass, maybe I'm uneducated, but man, this movie is fun. Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter is an example of what happens when you take the ridiculous vampire hunter concept in the complete opposite direction. The film takes the already bizarre concept and completely immerses itself in absurdist themes. The film, while not confusing, is exceedingly weird and nonsensical. A low-budget indie film released in 2001 by Odessa Filmworks, the film centers around Jesus Christ as he teams up with Mary Magnum and the wrestler El Santo to defeat the vampires terrorizing the lesbians of Ottawa, Canada. Yes, you heard me correctly. I will point out that this is supposed to be Jesus. He just gets a haircut within the first 10 minutes of the movie. It seems like the film was made to parody the low-budget action films of the 80s and 90s that were made to sell solely based on the name. Due to this, it's kind of hard to tell how much of the film is intentionally bad and how much is legitimate. Most of the plot beats are played for comedy, and there is not a single moment where the film takes itself seriously. The dialogue is almost laughably awkward at points, the action scenes are a weird confluence of somewhat decent choreography and unbelievably bad choreography. This is made even stranger by how the film alternates from realistic combat to what's basically cartoon combat. There's a lot of things in this film that aren't really explained, like why Jesus starts working with a luchador, or why everyone in this universe is either a vampire or a vampire killer. Now, obviously, enjoyment of this film comes mostly from how bad it is, and it's reasonably fair to assume that they intentionally play it up for this effect. However, my biggest concern is that they always seem to go a bit too far. The uncomfortable dialogue is funny, but it gets old fast. The constant introduction of random plot elements gets a little annoying towards the end. The synthesizer soundtrack, while fun, often detracts from whatever's actually happening. All in all, Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter is a fun, bad film to sit down and watch, but at the end of the day, it let its absurdism run a bit too wild, and it's not the best I've seen. Now, surprisingly, despite the similar titles, these two films don't actually have that much in common. One strives to ground a silly concept, while the other rolls with its weirdness and endeavors only to get weirder. One derives its entertainment from well-crafted action, one from absurd comedy and over-the-top themes. As far as actual vampire hunting goes, despite what you may think, Abraham Lincoln is considerably more skilled than Jesus Christ himself, but really it's useless to try comparing these two vastly different cinematic experiences. But despite their differences, the two films are united, if only for an instant, in their remarkable ability to leave you with much more than you ever thought they could. Thanks for watching.